This is a bit of an awkward question, isn't it? I know the answer to this, and I said as much on a social media platform, and I got the response to the effect that I was accusing the British of being racist. So I basically said that the British are not ready for an Asian Prime Minister. They don't want it to be a Prime Minister who is Asian and female, and they don't want it, and they're not quite ready for a British Prime Minister who is Asian and male. Obviously there's some sort of agenda being pushed through. I don't think that either of them, if they did replace Boris, would be there for long or be up to doing anything much. But I left it at that. This was a few days ago. But it bemused me that I was being accused of accusing somebody of being racist just because I said that the British are not quite ready for it yet. And better the devil you know, better the Boris we already know than someone new. There will be people who dislike the British who will be gloating at their latest humiliation. And they would be regarding it as a humiliation, and they won't be white. But it's just one of those things, isn't it? I mean, the Irish got their gay and Asian Prime Minister some years ago, and well, I guess it's the turn for the British now to get their comeuppance for their neoliberalism that they in fact started when they started selling off their public utilities under Thatcher. I mention this now because I know Stephen James has put out a rather forlorn video about what's happening and why is it happening, and rather touchingly he mentioned, he asked himself, well, and the chat, where we got our morality from. And I answered him that we must logically and necessarily get it from someone above us. Assuming there is such a thing as morality that humanity wishes to exercise, even though they are not successful most of the time, it obviously has an effect. I mean, there are people who don't care about these things and say, look, it's all the same, there will be people around, and so we shouldn't worry our pretty little heads too much about, abstract ideas about morality. But obviously they are important ideas, because if we don't have these things, these abstract ideas such as morality and moral systems, something horrible happens to our society, and and white people end up suddenly having Asian prime ministers, and they can't quite bring themselves to say that they're not ready for that. And so this brings me back to people telling me, to British people telling me that the British are not ready for Islam because it's not British. And I was also taken aback by, this, the fact was, by the fact that this was being said by a white convert to Islam, that they're not ready for it yet. But he was, but presumably he was talking to his associates who were telling him that they were not ready for it. But when will they accept it? They won't accept it until it's made absolutely clear to them that they have no choice but to accept it. And this is when, joined up thinking kicks in. As I was saying, horrible things happen to our society when we lack a moral system. But if most of us don't even know what a moral system is, then they can't really think things through. They don't know what the problem is. They will think the problem is too many immigrants. The problem is too many Asians. The problem is too many Muslims or Jews or whatever it is that they can see. Because non-intellectuals aren't able to conceive of ideas, abstract ideas, things that they can't see, ideas such as morality, justice. And they, unfortunately, because of the degeneracy that they suffer from being a matriarchy, on the one hand, they don't get what I'm trying to say, and on the other hand, they may not ever get what I'm trying to say because of their lack of education and their lack of humility. Because this is the kind of chaotic society that we now have. And that is why I propose restoring the patriarchy, because in a patriarchy you can go to the top person and the top person will really be in charge, not like these here today and gone tomorrow prime ministers, be they female or non-white or gay. So this is what's in store for us, and even the British, who are not very good at expressing themselves, know that that's not what they like, and they're afraid of saying it in so many words. And the subtext is, why is this happening to us? What is happening to us? Shall we blame the Jews again? Or the Muslims? Or, other minorities they could focus on. But it's not really about people, if you don't understand how society operates, which is through ideas that people do, that people put into practice. And I'm saying a whole bunch of things are wrong. Your moral system is wrong, your political system is wrong, but if you can't accept it or you don't understand it and you don't know what is a logical question to ask next, then because you are in denial and prefer to be in denial, then nothing will be solved. But when Stephen J. James asked, almost in despair, where we get our morality from, this is the crux of the matter. What is morality but a rule system? And what is a rule system but two forms of rules? So you have rules that are called religion, and they're old, so they've got a bit of a track record. Or you get secular political ideology such as communism, socialism, liberalism, Nazism, fascism, the cooked up secular political ideologies that are tried by dictators who crashed and burnt. So we should be able to deduce from this that secular political ideologies don't really work, even with the implementation of it by charismatic leaders. They tend to crash and burn. because it's too new and too many people fear it, or won't go along with it, or won't cooperate with a leader by following his orders, or they just don't understand it. And this is why secular Quranism is so important, because it is something old and something new, and it's something borrowed and something blue. It's a marriage of the old and the new, a marriage of the secular and the religious. But if you do not accept my authority, then you're going to reject the whole thing. You may very well ask, why should you accept my authority? I'm, one of those non-indigenous people that you perhaps rather resent. But interestingly today, somebody was talking about the story of Jonah. And again, many people will probably not know who Jonah was. But hopefully enough of you in the chat will know it's about someone who was sent by God to go to Nineveh, which was in Iraq, and he didn't like the Ninevites, and he didn't want to go and save them from themselves, and he went the opposite direction and got into a ship sailing the other way, and that ship was caught in a storm. He realised it was God who was sending bad weather to make him go to Nineveh, where he was meant to go, and he jumped into the sea in remorse because he didn't want the other passengers on his ship to drown with him. So he was swallowed by a whale, and he was vomited up on the beach of Nineveh. So that is basically the story, and it ended happily in that he preached to the Ninevites, and the Ninevites accepted their admonition and corrected themselves, and they were saved. So that is basically the story. Now, hierarchy is very important, because what you need to do so that there is accountability in your political leadership is that your system should be a patriarchy. So it resembles the hierarchy of a military. A military has a leader, the leader issues orders, and it cascades downwards. And if there's any fault in the transmission of the orders, or the fault in the carrying out of the orders, the weakest link is identified. And that was why people preferred patriarchy to matriarchy. Because what we live in now is a matriarchy where nobody's in charge. I mean, nominally Boris is in charge, but we know he isn't really. He's firefighting every day. He might have his leadership ended over some stupid party. Our ruling classes are fighting each other, and sooner or later they will be recruiting us to fight their battles for them. It's not a good sign. Because what we face here is the prospect of a kind of civil war and a kind of civil disorder. And I know what the problem is, and nobody wants to hear it from me. And it's not like other people are talking about it. They don't get it. All these so-called intellectuals in the dissident right, they can't talk about anything. And certainly the people who follow them are the lowest of the low, out and out foul-mouthed anti-Semites, Islamophobes and racists who are never admonished by the Telegram group person, because I guess, this person is too afraid to kick them out because he's so desperate to cling on to the few supporters that he has. And in the meantime, we have all these Telegram spies. My group will be properly moderated. There are annoying people there, but they haven't said anything too terrible and too stupid, and if they did, they would be told off. But anyway, the problem is that nobody accepts anybody else's authority, and so nothing gets done and no problems ever get solved. But back to what Stephen James said about where we get our morality from. Yes, we get our laws from Parliament, we get it from the legislature, i.e. the MPs who pass laws, and they are enforced by the police, but not at all fairly, not at all evenly, but after a fashion they are enforced. And we're not happy with them because we don't trust the source of these laws. And they are new anyway. They are new. They are horribly new, and they may not be here for very long. So this is something that we keep having to deal with. Things changing unexpectedly for no good reason, and changing more quickly and for worse reasons. I have identified a few people who could short-circuit the whole thing, but I suppose they are frightened. My ideas are alien and outlandish, are they not? But I think they are explicable and coherent. Except that they don't want to listen. They don't want to listen because they don't want to agree. So what I suppose they are doing is waiting for things to get worse before they'll change their minds, if they ever do. And so my role is to tell them, to predict the future and tell them things will get worse. To encourage them to see things my way sooner rather than later. But back to the question of morality and where it comes from. If I tell you to do something, you might do it because you agree with me anyway, right? You think it should be done, so you're happy to do it. Or you think you have to do as I say because I'm in a senior position to you, supposing you were my junior at work or something. That would make you do it even if you didn't agree and didn't like me. And this is how you get things done, because, otherwise we'd all, not do anything because we didn't like the person, we didn't agree with the order. And then we'd be criminals if the thing were important enough. So there is a proper way of approaching things. If the country I'm in, if the society I reside in were a patriarchy, I would know exactly who to go to, because he would be, the person in charge, the responsible adult in charge of the country. But I know there isn't one in our matriarchy, and therefore people have to agree that their society, their Western nation, is indeed a matriarchy. Are they prepared to do that? Probably not. They know where I want to go, and they don't want to go there, so they'll dig their heels in and pretend that water isn't wet and fire isn't hot, and forbid me from mentioning it. And so nothing will get done. Are there any reasons for them not doing what I ask? I think it's mostly ego or cowardice. I'm not somebody who enjoys ordering people about. I'm really quite easygoing. I would rather people liked me. But if it is necessary that I do a certain thing, then yes, I will go on about it at every opportunity. Maybe too frequent for your own liking. The moral imperative is a topic that I covered yesterday. It is about our identity as honest, rational and moral people. The presumption is that we as human beings would wish to be considered honest and rational and moral in order to, be admitted into society, get jobs, get marriage prospects, so that people trust us and maybe even follow our orders. See, that was a presumption of Immanuel Kant. So what he was saying was that there are certain things that entail there are certain imperatives that we must follow if we wish to be identified as honest, rational and moral. In his time, I suppose, these things were obvious, but in our degenerate times, it's a job even trying to explain it to people who've been to university. I'm sure most people don't even think of themselves as having any duty to be honest or rational or moral. But the moral imperative is simply this. If you want to be known as honest and rational and moral, then you have to follow the logic of the conclusions based on undisputed fact, and you have to act on them. Another example, an example that comes to mind is you are a man, you have a family, you have a wife, you have to support them. And if they are attacked, you have to protect them. Because you know that if you ran away, leaving them to be hurt or killed, you wouldn't be considered a moral, respectable member of society. And whether you want to do it or not, you have to risk your life and protect them and sacrifice your comfort by going to work and supporting them, because you have no choice if you want to be considered a respectable member of society. That is basically what the moral imperative is. I am aware that people don't think in these terms. They think more about whether they fancy doing something or not. There isn't an awful lot of joined up thinking. It's very frustrating. And yeah, frankly, there's a lot of avoidance. You can talk, and people will not understand, or pretend not to understand, or pretend you said something else, in order to escape from the moral imperative that understanding what you said would entail. And so, the fact that the British are now about to have an even worse Prime Minister, in their view, looms before them. You're being acculturated into never knowing your Prime Ministers properly, always hating them, but being forbidden from criticising on grounds of political correctness, and it's going to get worse. How do you get yourself out of this? You would have to acknowledge that you live in a matriarchy and get to know the meaning of the word. And this means that YouTubers with channels bigger than mine have to talk about these ideas, and they won't, because they don't like me, right? That's the reason why my ideas are not propagated, not discussed. They prefer to talk about peripheral matters that have nothing to do with what is the cause of the disease. They prefer to blame Jews, or whatever they like to blame. All the while they think they have a choice, that it is somehow my duty to make them like what I propose. But the most ridiculous of all is the idea that because of their white skin, they don't need a moral system. Or they can lie that they have a moral system, or they can pretend that they believe that Jesus is God, or that they can pretend that they don't have to believe that Jesus is God. Or, if the whole thing is crashed and burned, that they don't have to think about what is to replace it. Because they can always blame the Jews, right? And as for the Jews, they're not really in a good place either. Because the problem with the Jews is that they don't have a pope. They don't really have a leader. And when neither Jew nor Gentile has a leader who's really in charge, then all questions that require a yes or a no always comes back with a maybe. And that is what is driving you mad. I have spent a lot of time explaining my ideas, repeatedly and loudly. I don't see how more simply I can put it. I'm sure there were prophets sent to other places who were not heeded, and so their civilizations died. But in theory, this is what the Quran says anyway, that God always sent a warning before a civilization was destroyed. And that reminds me of the Roman historian Livy, who said in late imperial Rome, saying of Romans that we can neither bear our sins nor their cure. And so they didn't do anything. And in the end, it was all over before Muhammad was born. I think it was either the 500s or the 600s. I don't think my explanation is hard to follow. It's just that you don't want to follow it. You don't want to do very simple things that you could do. You could demand that Ed Dutton have me on his show. You could demand that Millennial Woes have me on his show. And who else? There's somebody else whose name I can't remember. But obviously it would have to be somebody with a bigger channel. And the reasons are, well, pathetic, aren't they? The corrupt. They don't want to because they don't want my idea to be platformed, but they have nothing better. And everything is getting very quickly worse. Can you even blame your ruling classes? I think they're actually insane. They are suffering from some kind of dementia and amnesia, aren't they? Oh, Seamus Crawford thinks it would be quite funny if I was some YouTuber allowed to challenge my ideas on his channel. Walker's wisdom is correct for a change about morality being supposed to come from God, because obviously for morality to come from what a human is, it's not good enough, because humans die and humans can't really punish other humans forever, so it has to be something that will be around for longer than humanity is, and that has to be God. See, Walker's wisdom, he talks as if he knows what he's talking about, and really he's just, uneducated, but he loves to hear the sound of his own voice. He has a convincing manner that, pleases the plebs who don't care about the truth of anything. They only want to be entertained. Yes, so now we're talking about, these Asians in Parliament that will be in charge soon. No, there's just kind of a hint of unease. It's not going to get better, is it? What do these Asians have that you don't have? Just a little idea that they should have. A marriage certificate, because before they have children, they just have this idea because of their tradition that they shouldn't have bastards, which you really aren't that bothered about. Who cares about a bastard here and a bastard there? It's normal. In fact, they are the majority now. The majority are degenerate. Unmarried parents are the majority. Degeneracy is general. Morality is basically the law. The law should be based on a moral system. Obviously, if I'm caught doing anything wrong, I would suffer some legal penalty. I don't want to be the leader of it or anything. I'm just hoping that somebody with a bigger YouTube channel can say, oh, what you're saying makes sense. But if you listen to the, slightly more respectable YouTube channels, that go beyond, who don't want to be identified as alt-right, the New Culture Forum, for example, GB News, it's pretty pathetic, isn't it? And the New Culture Forum is fronted by, what's his name, Peter something or other. Anyway, he's gay. It's like they're all gay. Paul Williams, gay. Gay peepers. They're not going to be taking a stand against a matriarchy, will they? They won't. So that's why they won't platform me, because, obviously the alphabet people will be required to have a lower status than the unmarried parent. And they won't be cooperating in that, or even allowing such a subject to be discussed. And anyway, they have a problem with Islam and Muslims. So Peter Whittle, ex-UKIP, we all know what UKIP are like. They hate Muslims. So they won't be cooperating with me on the subject. So, well, you will be the ones suffering. I know you don't like Muslims much, but, well, what else are you going to use? You're going to use Christine Ramsey's Catholicism. Yeah, she's just gonna say, well, let's bring national service back. What is the British way of life? Who knows? Underage sex? British way of life is going to school to collect your primary school children and then taking them to a Weatherspoons pub, right, Christine? That's a British way of life. Morality comes from the minds of people, groups. Well, yes, well, they would be practicing it if it were in operation. Ethan Ralph. I keep having to look up who the hell is he? I was talking about your Yo video, actually, Stephen James. So he's the guy who hosts Killstream. I don't really listen to that sort of thing. Yeah, I was talking about you ranting about the prospect of getting an Asian Prime Minister. Dr. Mengele, look, secular Quranism would deal with everything. You see, that's the whole thing about it. It will deal with your gender relations, your employment law, your thought crime legislation, your taxation, your international relations, your domestic, your crime. It'll deal with everything, as well as the economy. What do you mean, giggling about murdering people for non-crimes? I don't remember talking about that. I don't remember John Kishler talking about killing anyone for non-crimes. What will I be exposed for, Seamus Crawford? No, I'm not talking to anybody. Adam Green. Well, I don't particularly want to talk to him, but yeah, I suppose he would have to be one of my destination channels. I could easily get my ideas spoken about at the local pub by visiting it. You can stand illegally for Oz Parliament and stir up Peter Dutton. Who is Peter Dutton? Yes, that's another thing my mother said today. Why don't you stand for office? And I thought, no. I had to explain to her that it would mean that I didn't, standing for Parliament would show that I didn't really get the situation. What is CWA? I'm happy with SK, thank you. What's CWA? I don't know what viral event you're talking about, Stephen James. So many comments. I did watch the thing that you asked me to, Stephen James. I did watch it. And I'm talking about your Yo stream today. I'm sure I commented on it. I always try to anyway, to show you I watched it, obviously. Alright, I've spoken for nearly 50 minutes. I don't know who Frydenberg is. I don't know what you're talking about. Anyway, I'm going to sum up what this stream is about. No, the British are not ready for an Asian Prime Minister. It would dismay them and shame them, and they'll be even more miserable. So even though they hate Boris, they kind of are thinking, better the devil we know. But they probably won't have a choice, just because of the way Parliament is behaving. I wonder what the backbenchers really think. I mean, I don't think they fancy being ruled by Rishi Sunak or Sajid Javed or Priti Patel. So we'll see. I mean, the changes will come quicker and be worse, and you don't have to talk about secular Quranism as the ultimate holistic solution for your problems. Okay, I'll click on this video. I'm sure I've seen it. Oops. Okay. Something. Okay, I'm obviously not clicking in the right way on the thing. that's my own thing. The link that you just put there, wasn't it? No, sorry. I'm a bit confused with all my open windows. And my computer is being particularly slow. Now I can click on that link in the chat. The godless death of... Yeah, I saw that. Look, Stephen, a lot of your streams are a bit long sometimes, and they ramble, and they don't seem very coherent, and just because I've seen it doesn't mean I've understood it or remembered it, right? Okay, so Stephen has just posted a comment. Look, I'm just saying, it's okay. It's okay if you don't think, somebody's race is a big part of somebody's identity, in the same way that somebody's religion could be a big part of their identity. It depends on how they express their religion and how they express their race and whatever. And the society that I envisage is the one that you can talk about these things. Not that I would want to encourage racism, but if you talk about why you don't like it, maybe you'll actually arrive at a good reason, rather than say, oh, but I can't say this and I can't say that. I just don't like it. Just the thought of it creeps me out, or whatever. Maybe you've got somebody who could be Prime Minister, but they're just obese, or a bachelor like Ted Heath was, or but you can't find sound reasons for objecting to them. And what I'm saying about secular Quranism, you guys just don't get it about, the First Amendment and this idea of no thought crime legislation, And obviously, anti-discrimination legislation is thought crime, because you can only discriminate through an act of thought. And how dare they tell you who you can or can't hate? And what do they think is going to happen to you when you are told whom you can or can't hate? The whole thing is insane. But anyway, I'm saying what you need is the equivalent of the First Amendment. I mean, I know the Americans have it, but they're now so degenerate that they don't even value it. And I've spoken to too many alt-right YouTubers who say, I don't care about the First Amendment. I don't care about free speech. If I had the chance, I would censor other people the way we was ourselves censored. And if this were to happen generally, then you will be even less able to discuss ideas, and even more likely to do crazy, stupid things that will end your civilization. So one of the most important points I want to make is that Chapter 2, verse 256 is the basis of the First Amendment. And I don't see how it can be falsified. I know Islamophobes don't like to think of the First Amendment as being somehow based on a verse in the Quran, but I don't see how they can pretend that it isn't. And of course it's all linked. You want a new moral system, you choose the best one available. The best one available has been, would be around for quite a while. So you get, well, Judaism is totally unsuitable. You don't want to be Jews, it's too hard, these Jews don't follow it. Christianity, it's kaput. It can't be Hinduism and Buddhism because, well, our civilizations, they haven't really amounted to much. So the next one, the Goldilocks version must be Islam. And you don't have to believe in God to reluctantly acknowledge that it comes with an official handbook whose words are all formalised. Nobody's going to say, oh, but it doesn't say this, or the words are different in my edition, and crap like that. But yeah, I've rambled for long enough. Thank you for listening. I have to be off.